Chapter 2 Lesson 1 The Rich Don't Work for Money. Dad, can you tell me how to get rich? My dad put down the evening paper. Why do you want to get rich, son? Because today Jimmy's mom drove up in their new Cadillac and they were going to their beach house for the weekend. He took 3 of his friends, but Mike and I weren't invited. They told us we weren't invited because we are poor kids. They did? My dad asked incredulously. Yeah, they did, I replied in a hurt tone. My dad silently shook his head, pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose, and went back to reading the paper. I stood waiting for an answer. The year was 1956. I was 9 years old. By some twist of fate, I attended the same public school where the rich people sent their kids. We were primarily a sugar plantation town. The managers of the plantation and the other affluent people of the town, such as doctors, business owners, and bankers, sent their children to this school. Grades 1 to 6. After grade 6, their children were generally sent off to private schools. Because my family lived on one side of the street, I went to this school. Had I lived on the other side of the street, I would have gone to a different school with kids from families more like mine. After grade 6, these kids and I would go on to the public intermediate and high school. There was no private school for them or for me. My dad finally put down the paper. I could tell he was thinking. Well, son, he began slowly. If you want to be rich, you have to learn to make money. How do I make money? I asked. Well, use your head, son, he said, smiling, which really meant, that's all I'm going to tell you, or I don't know the answer, so don't embarrass me. A partnership is formed. The next morning, I told my best friend Mike what my dad had said. As best I could tell, Mike and I were the only poor kids in this school. Mike was like me in that he was in this school by a twist of fate. Someone had drawn a jog in the line for the school district, and we wound up in school with the rich kids. We weren't really poor, but we felt as if we were because all the other boys had new baseball gloves, new bicycles, new everything. Mom and dad provided us with the basics like food, shelter, clothes. But that was about it. My dad used to say, if you want something, work for it. We wanted things, and there was not much work available for 9-year-old boys. So, what do we do to make money? Mike asked. I don't know, I say. But do you want to be my partner? He agreed, and so on that Saturday morning, Mike became my first business partner. We spent all morning coming up with ideas on how to make money. Occasionally, we talked about all the cool guys at Jimmy's beach house having fun. It hurt a little, but that hurt was good, for it inspired us to keep thinking of a way to make money. Finally, that afternoon, a bolt of lightning came through our heads. It was an idea Mike had gotten from a science book he had read. Excitedly, we shook hands, and the partnership had now had a business. For the next several weeks, Mike and I ran around our neighborhoods, knocking on doors and asking our neighbors if they would save their toothpaste tube for us. With puzzled looks, most adults consented with a smile. Some asked us what we are doing, to which we replied, "We can't tell you, it's a business secret." My mom grew distressed as the weeks wore on. We had selected a site next to her washing machine as the place we were stockpile the raw materials. In a brown cardboard box that one time held cat's up bottles, our little pile of used toothpaste tube began to grow. Finally, my mom put her foot down. The sight of her neighborhood, messy, crumbled, used toothpaste tube had gotten to her. "What are my boys doing?" he asked. "And I don't want to hear again that it's a business secret. Do something with this mess, or I am going to throw it out." Mike and I pleaded and begged, explaining that we would soon have enough and then we would begin production. We informed her that we were waiting on a couple of neighbors to finish using up their toothpaste so we could have their tube. Mom granted us a 1 week extension. The date to begin production was moved on. The pressure was on. My first partnership was already being threatened with an eviction notice from our warehouse space by my own mom. It became Mike's job to tell the neighbors to quickly use up their toothpaste, saying their dentist wanted them to brush more often anyway. I began to put together the production line. One day my dad drove up with a friend to see two 9-year-old boys in the driveway with the production line operating at full speed. There was fine white powder everywhere. On a long table were small milk cartons from school, and our family's hibachi grill was glowing with red hot coal at maximum heat. Dad walked up cautiously, having to park the car at the base of the driveway since the production line blocked the carport. As he and his friend got closer, they saw a steel pot sitting on top of the coils, with the toothpaste tube being melted down. In those days, toothpaste did not come in a plastic tube. The tube was made of lead. So, once the paint was burned off, the tube were dropped in the small steel pot, melted until they become liquid, and with my mom's pot holder, we were pouring the lead through a small hole in the top of the milk carton. The milk carton were filled with plaster or Paris. The white powder everywhere was the plaster before we mixed it with water. In my haste, I had knocked the bag over, and the entire area looked like it had been hit by a snowstorm. The milk carton where the outer container for plaster or Paris molds. My dad and his friend watched as we carefully poured the molten lead through a small hole in the top of plaster of Paris cube. Careful, my dad said. I nodded without looking up. Finally, once the pouring was through, I put the steel pot down and smiled at my dad. What are you boys doing? He asked with a cautious smile. We are doing what you told me to do. We are going to be rich. I said. Yep, said Mike, grinning and nodding his head. We are partners. And what is in those plaster molds? Dad asked. Watch, I said. This should be a good batch. With a small hammer, I tapped to the steel and divided the cube in half. Cautiously, I pulled up the top half of the plaster mold and a lead nickel fell off. Oh my god, my dad said. You are casting nickel out of lead? That's right, Mike said. We are doing as you told us to do. We are making money. My dad's friend turned and burst into laughter. My dad smiled and shook his head. Along with a fire and a box of spent toothpaste tubes in front of him were two little boys covered with white dust and smiling from ear to ear. He asked us to put everything down and sit with him on the front step of our house. With a smile, he gently explained what the word counterfeiting meant. Our dreams were dashed. You mean this is illegal? Asked Mike in a quivering voice. Let them go, my dad's friend said. They might be developing a natural talent. My dad glared at him. Yes, it is illegal, my dad said gently. But my boys have shown great creativity and original thought. Keep going. I'm really proud of you. Disappointed, Mike and I sat in silence for about 20 minutes before we began cleaning up our mess. The business was over on opening day. Sweeping the powder up, I looked at Mike and said, I guess Jimmy and his friends are right. We are poor. My dad was just leaving as I said that. Boys, he said, you are only poor if you give up. The most important thing is that you did something. Most people only talk and dream of getting rich. You have done something. I am very proud of you, proud of the two of you. I will say it again. Keep going, don't quit. Mike and I stood there in silence. They were nice words, but we still did not know what to do. So, how come we are not rich, Dad? I asked. Because I choose to be a school teacher. School teachers really don't think about being rich. We just like to teach. I wish I could help you, but I really don't know how to make money. Mike and I turned and continued our cleanup. I know, said my dad. If you boys want to learn how to be rich, don't ask me. Talk to your dad, Mike. My dad? Asked Mike with a scrunched up face. Yeah, your dad, repeated my dad with a smile. Your dad and I have the same banker, and he raps about your father. He's told me several times that your father is brilliant when it comes to making money. My dad? Mike asked again in disbelief. Then how come we don't have a nice car and a nice house like the rich kids at school? A nice car and a nice house do not necessarily mean you are rich or you know how to make money, my dad replied. Jimmy's dad worked for the sugar plantation. He's not much different from me. He works for a company and I work for the government. The company buys the car for him. The sugar company is in financial trouble and Jimmy's dad may soon have nothing. Your dad is different, Mike. He seems to be building an empire, and I suspect in a few years he will be a very rich man. With that, Mike and I got excited again. With new vigor, we began cleaning up the mess caused by our new defunct first business. As we were cleaning, we made up plans on how and when to talk to Mike's dad. The problem was that Mike's dad working long hours and often did not come home until late. His dad owned warehouses, a construction company, a chain of stores, and three restaurants. It was the restaurants that kept him out late. Mike caught the bus home after he had finished cleaning up. He was going to talk to his dad when he got home that night and ask him if he would teach us how to become rich. Mike promised to call as soon as he had talked to his dad, even if it was late. The phone rang at 8:30 p.m. Okay, I said, next Saturday, and put the phone down. Mike's dad had agreed to meet with Mike and me at 7:30 Saturday morning. I caught the bus to the poor side of town. The lessons begin. I will pay you 10 cents an hour. Even by 1956 pay standards, 10 cents an hour was low. Michael and I met with his dad that morning at 8 o'clock. He was already busy and had been at work for more than an hour. His construction supervisor was just living in his pickup truck as I walked up to his simple, small, and tidy house. Mike met me at the door. Dad's on the phone, and he said to wait on the back porch. Mike said as he opened the door. The old wooden floor creaked as I stepped across the threshold of this aging house. There was a cheap mat just inside the door. The mat was there to hide the years of wear from countless footsteps that the floor had supported. Although clean, it needed to be replaced. I felt claustrophobic as I entered the narrow living room, which was filled with old, musty, overstuffed furniture that today would be collector's items. Sitting on the couch were two women, a little older than my mom. Across from the women sat a man in workman's clothes. He wore khaki slacks, and a khaki shirt, neatly pressed but without stretch, and polished workbooks. He was about 10 years older than my dad. I would say about 45 years old. They smiled as Mike and I walked past them, heading for the kitchen which led to the porch that overlooked the backyard. I smiled back shyly. Who are this person? I asked. Oh, they work for my dad. The older man runs his warehouses and the women are the managers of the restaurants. And you saw the construction supervisor who is working on a road project about 50 miles from here. His other supervisor, who is building a truck of houses, had already left before you got there. Does this go on all the time? I asked. Not always, but quite often, said Mike, smiling as he pulled up a chair to sit down next to me. I asked him if he would teach us to make money, Mike said. Oh, and what did he say to that? I asked with cautious curiosity. Well, he had a funny look on his face at first, and then he said he would make us an offer. Oh, I said, rocking my chair back against the wall. Well, I sat there, perched on two rear legs of the chair. Mike did the same thing. Do you know what the offer is? I asked. No, but we will soon find out. Suddenly, Mike's dad burst through the rickety skin screen door and onto the porch. Mike and I jumped to our feet, not out of respect but because we were startled. Ready, boys? Mike's dad asked, and as he pulled up a chair to sit down with us, we nodded our head as we pulled our chair away from the wall to sit in front of him. He was a big man, about 6 feet tall and 20 pounds. My dad was taller, about the same weight, and 5 years older than Mike's dad. They sort of looked alike, though not of the same ethnic makeup. Maybe their energy was similar. Mike says, you want to learn to make money. Is that correct, Robert? I nodded my head quickly, but with a little intimidation. He had a lot of power behind his words and smile. Okay, here's my offer. I will teach you, but I won't do it classroom style. You work for me, I will teach you. You don't work for me, I won't teach you. I can teach you faster if you work, and I am wasting my time if you just want to sit and listen, like you do in school. That's my offer. Take it or leave it. Um, may I ask a question first? I asked. No, take it or leave it. I have got too much work to do to waste my time. If you cannot make up your mind decisively, then you will never learn to make money anyway. Opportunities come and go. Being able to know when to make quick decisions is an important skill. You have an opportunity that you asked for. School is beginning and or it's over in 10 seconds, Mike's dad said with a teasing smile. Take it, I said. Take it, said Mike. Good, said Mike's dad. Mrs. Martin will be by in 10 minutes. After I am through with her, you ride with her to my super ready, and you can begin working. I will pay you 10 cents an hour and you will work for 3 hours every Saturday. But I have a softball game today, I said. Mike's dad lowered his voice to a stern tone. Take it or leave it, he said. I will take it, I replied, choosing to work and learn instead of playing softball. 30 cents later. By 9 a.m. on a beautiful Saturday morning, Mike and I were working for Mrs. Martin. She was a kind and patient woman. She always said that Mike and I reminded her of her two sons who were grown and gone. Although kind, she believed in hard work and she kept us working. He was a taskmaster. We spent 3 hours taking canned goods off the shelves and with a feather duster, brushing each can to get the dust out and then restocking them neatly. It was excruciatingly boring work. Mike's dad, whom I call my rich dad, owned 9 of these superties with large parking lots. They were the early version of the 7 to 11 convenience stores. Little neighborhood grocery stores where people bought items such as milk, bread, butter, and cigarettes. The problem was this was Hawaii before air conditioning, and the stores could not close the door because of the heat. On two sides of the store, the doors had to be wide open to the road and parking lot. Every time a car drove by or pulled into the parking lot, dust would swirl and settle in the store. Hence, we had a job for as long as there was no air conditioning. For 3 weeks, Mike and I reported to Mr. Martin and worked for 3 hours. By noon, our work was over and she dropped 3 little dimes in each of our hands. Now, even at the age of 9 in the mid 1950s, 30 cents was not too exciting. Comic books cost 10 cents back then, so I usually spent my money on comic books and went home. By Wednesday of the fourth week, I was ready to quit. I had agreed to work only because I wanted to learn to make money from Mike's dad, and now I was a slave for 10 cents an hour. On the top of that, I had not seen Mike's dad since that first Saturday. I'm quitting. I'm quitting, I told Mike at lunchtime. The school lunch was miserable. School was boring, and now I did not even have my Saturdays to look forward to. But it was the 30 cents that really got to me. This time Mike smiled. What are you laughing at? I asked my anger and frustration. I asked with anger and frustration. Dad said this would happen. He said to meet with him when you were ready to quit. What? I said indigently. He has been waiting for me to get fed up. Shut off, Mike said. That's kind of different. He teaches differently from your dad. Your mom and dad lecture a lot. My dad is quiet and a man of few words. He just wait till this Saturday. You just wait till this Saturday. I will tell you, I will tell him you are ready. You mean I have been set up? No, not really, but maybe. Dad will explain on Saturday. Waiting in line on Saturday. I was ready to face him, and I was prepared. Even my real dad was angry with him. My real dad, the one I call the poor one, thought that my rich dad was violating child labor law and should be investigated. My educated poor dad told me to demand what I deserve, at least 25 cents an hour. My poor dad told me that if I did not get a raise, I was to quit immediately. You don't need that damn job anyway, said my poor dad with indignation. At 8 o'clock Saturday morning, I was going through the same rickety door of Mike's house. Take a seat and wait in line, Mike's dad said as I entered. He turned and disappeared into his little office next to a bedroom. I looked around the room and did not see Mike anywhere. Feeling awkward, I cautiously sat down next to the same two women who were there 4 weeks earlier. They smiled and slid across the couch to make room for me. 45 minutes went by and I was steaming. The two women had met with him and left 30 minutes earlier. An an older gentleman was in there for 20 minutes and was also gone. The house was empty and I sat out in his musty, dark living room on a beautiful sunny Hawaiian day waiting to talk to a cheapskate who exploited children. I could hear him rustling around the office, talking on the phone and ignoring me. I was now ready to walk out, but for some reason I stayed. Finally, 15 minutes later, at exactly 9 o'clock, Rich Dad walked out of his office, said nothing, and signaled with his hand for me to enter his Digny office. I understand you want a raise or you are going to quit, Rich Dad said as he shriveled in his office chair. Well, you're not keeping your end of the bargain. I blurted, blurted out neatly in tears. It was really frightening for a 9-year-old boy to confront a grown up. You said that you would teach me if I worked for you. Well, I have worked for you. I have worked hard. I have given up my basketball games to work for you, and you don't keep your word. You haven't taught me anything. You are a crock like everyone in town thinks you are. You are greedy. You want all the money and don't take care of your employees. You make me wait and don't show me any respect. I'm only a little boy and I deserve to be treated better. Rich Dad rocked back in the swivel chair, hands up to his chin, somewhat staring at me. It was like He was studying me. Not bad, he said. In less than a month, you sound like most of my employees. What? I asked. Not understanding what he was saying, I continued with my reverence. I thought you were going to keep your end of the bargain and teach me. Instead, you want to torture me? That's cruel. That's really cruel. I'm teaching you, Rich Dad said quietly. What have you taught me? Nothing, I said angrily. You haven't even talked to me once since I agreed to work for peanuts. 10 cents an hour. Ha! I should notify the government about you. You have child labor laws. You know, my dad worked for the government, you know. Wow, said Rich Dad. Now you sound like most of the people who used to work for me. People I have either fired or they have quit. So, what do you have to say? I demanded, feeling pretty brave for a little kid. You lied to me, I worked for you, and you have not kept your word. You haven't taught me anything. How do you know that I haven't taught you anything? Asked Rich Dad calmly. Well, you have never talked to me. I have worked for 3 weeks and you have not taught me anything, I said with a pout. Does teaching mean talking or a lecture? Rich Dad asked. Well, yes, I replied. That's how they teach you in school, he said smilingly. But that is not how life teaches you. And I would say that life is the best teacher of all. Most of the time, life does not talk to you, it just sort of pushes you around. Each push is life saying, wake up, there's something I want you to learn. What is this man talking about? I asked myself silently. Life pushing me around? Was life talking to me? Now I knew. I had to quit my job. I was talking to someone who needed to be locked up. If you learned life lessons, you will do well. If not, life will just continue to push you around. People do two things. Some just let life push them around, others get angry and push back. But they push back against their boss or their job or their husband or wife. They do not know it's life that's pushing. I had no idea what he was talking about. Life pushes all of us around. Some give up, others fight. If you learn the lesson and move on, they welcome life pushing them around. To these few people, it means they need and want to learn something. They learn and move on. Most quiet and most quit and a few like you fight. Rich Dad stood and shouted the creaky old wooden window that needed repair. If you learn this lesson, you will grow into a wise, wealthy, and happy young man. If you don't, you will spend your life blaming a job, low pay, or your boss for your problems. You will live life hoping for that big break that will solve all your money problem. Rich Dad looked over at me to see if I was still listening. His eyes met mine. We stared at each other, streams of communicating going between us through our eyes. Finally, I pulled away once I had absorbed his last message. I knew he was right. I was blaming him, and I did ask to learn. I was fighting. Rich Dad continued. Or if you are the kind of person who has no guts, you just give up every time life pushes you. If you are that kind of person, you will live all your life playing it safe, doing the right thing, saving yourself for some events that never happens. Then you die a boring old man. You will have a lot of friends who really like you because you were such a nice, hardworking guy. You spend a life playing it safe, doing the right things. And the truth is, you let life push you into submission. Deep down, you were terrified of taking risks. You really wanted to win, but the fear of losing was greater than the excitement of winning. Deep inside, you and only you will know you didn't go for it. You choose to play it safe. Our eyes met again. For 10 seconds, we looked at each other, only pulling away once the message was received. You have been pushing me around? I asked. Some people might say that, smiled. Rich Dad, I would say that I just gave you a test of life. What test of life? I asked, still angry but now curious, even ready to learn. You boys are the first people that have ever asked me to teach them how to make money. I have more than 150 employees, and not one of them has asked me what I know about money. They asked me for a job and a paycheck, but never to teach them about money. So most will spend the best years of their lives working for money, not really understanding what it is they are working for. I sat there listening intently. So, when Mike told me about you wanting to learn how to make money, I decided to design a course that was close to real life. I could talk until I was blue in the face, but you wouldn't hear a thing. So, I decided to let life push you around a bit so you could hear me. That's why I only paid you 10 cents. So, what is the lesson I learned from working for only 10 cents an hour? I asked. That you are cheap and exploit your workers? Rich Dad rocked back and laughed heartily. Finally, after his laughing stopped, he said, You'd best change your point of view. Stop blaming me, thinking I'm the problem. If you think I'm the problem, then you have to change me. If you realize that you're the problem, then you can change yourself, learn something, and grow wiser. Most people want everyone else in the world to change, but themselves. Let me tell you, it's easier to change yourself than everyone else. I don't understand, I said. Don't blame me for your problems, Rich Dad said, growing impatient. But you only pay me 10 cents. So what are you learning? Rich Dad asked, smiling. That you are cheap, I said with a sly grin. See, you think I'm the problem, said Rich Dad. But you are. Well, keep that attitude and you learn nothing. Keep the attitude that I'm the problem, and what choices do you have? Well, if you don't pay me more or show me more respect and teach me, I will quit. Well put, Rich Dad said, and that's exactly what most people do. They quit and go looking for another job. better opportunity, and higher pay. Actually, thinking that a new job or more pay will solve the problem. In most cases, it won't. So, what will solve the problem? I asked. Just take this measly 10 cents, an hour, and a smile. Rich Dad smiled. That's what the other people do. Just expect a paycheck knowing that they and their family will struggle financially. But that's all they do, waiting for a raise, thinking that more money will solve the problem. Most just accept it, and some take a second job working harder but again accepting a small paycheck. I sat staring at the floor, beginning to understand the lesson Rich Dad was presenting. I could sense it was a test of life. Finally, I looked up and repeated the question. So, what will solve the problem? This, he said, tapping me gently on my head. This stuff between your eyes. It was at the moment that Rich Dad shared the pivotal point of view that separated him from his employees and my poor dad and led him to eventually become one of the richest men in Hawaii, while my highly educated but poor dad struggled financially all his life. It was a singular point of view that made all the difference over a lifetime. Rich Dad said over and over the point of view which I call lesson number one. The poor and the middle class work for money. The rich have money, work for them. On that bright Saturday morning, I was learning a completely different point of view from what I had been taught by my poor dad. At the age of 9, I grew aware that both dads wanted me to learn. Both dads encouraged me to study, but not the same things. My highly educated dad recommended that I do what he did. Son, I want you to study hard, get good grades, so you can find a safe, secure job with big company and make sure it has excellent benefits. My rich dad wanted me to learn how money works so I could make it work for me. These lessons I would learn through life with his guidance, not because of a classroom. My rich dad continued my first lesson. I'm glad you got angry about working for 10 cents an hour. If you had not gotten angry and had gladly accepted it, I would have to tell you that I could not teach you. You see, true learning takes energy, passion, and a burning desire. Anger is a big part of that formula. For passion is anger and love combined. When it becomes when it comes to money, most people want to play it safe and feel secure. So passion does not direct them. Fear does. So is that why they will take a job with low pay? I asked. Yes, said Rich Dad. Some people say I exploit them because I don't pay as much as the sugar plantation or the government. I say the people exploit themselves. It's their fear, not mine. But don't you feel you should pay them more? I asked. I don't have to. And besides, more money will not solve the problem. Just look at your dad. He makes a lot of money and he still can't pay his bills. Most people, given more money, only get into more debt. So that's why the 10 cents an hour. I said smiling. It's a part of the lesson. That's right, smiled Rich Dad. You see, your dad went to school and got an excellent education, so he could get a high paying job, which he did, but he still has money problems because he never learned anything about money at school. On the top of that, he believes in working for money. And you don't? I asked. No, not really, said Rich Dad. If you want to learn to work for money, then stay in school. That is a great place to learn to do that. But if you want to learn how to have money work for you, then I will teach you that. But only if you want to learn. Wouldn't everyone want to learn that? I asked. No, said Rich Dad. Simply because it's easier to learn to work for money, especially if fear is your primary emotion when the subject of money is discussed. I don't understand, I said with a phone. Don't worry about that for now. Just know that it's fear that keeps most people working at a job. The fear of not paying their bills, the fear of being fired, the fear of not having enough money, the fear of starting over. That's the price of studying to learn a profession or trade and then working for money. Most people become a slave to money and then get angry at their boss. Learning to have money work for you is completely different course of study, I asked. Absolutely, Rich Dad answered. Absolutely. We sat in silence on that beautiful Hawaiian Saturday morning. My friend would have just been studying their little league baseball game. But for some reason, I was now thankful I had decided to work for 10 cents an hour. I sensed that I was about to learn something my friends would not learn in school. Ready to learn? Asked Rich Dad. Absolutely, I said with a grin. I have kept my promise. I have been teaching you from afar, my rich dad said. At 9 years old, you have gotten a taste of what it feels like to work for money. Just multiply your last month by 50 years and you will have an idea of what most people spend their life doing. I don't understand, I said. How did you feel waiting in the line to see me? Once to get hired and once to ask for more money. Terrible, I said. If you choose to work for money, that is what life is like for many people, said Rich Dad. And how did you feel when Mrs. Martin dropped 3 dimes in your hand for 3 hours' work? I felt like it wasn't enough. It seemed like nothing. I was disappointed, I said. And that is how most employees felt when they look at their paychecks, especially after all the tax and other deductions are taken out. At least you got 100%. You mean most workers don't get paid everything? I asked with amusement. Heavens no, said Rich Dad. The government always takes its share first. How do they do that? I asked. Taxes, said Rich Dad. You are taxed when you earn. You are taxed when you spend. You are taxed when you save. You are taxed when you die. Why do people let the government do that to them? The rich don't, said Rich Dad with a smile. The poor and middle class too. I will bet you that I earn more than your dad. Yet he pays more in taxes. How can that be? I asked. As a 9-year-old boy, that made no sense to me. Why would some let the government do that to them? Rich Dad sat there in silence. I guess he wanted me to listen instead of jabber away at the mouth. Finally, I calmed down. I did not like what I had heard. I knew my dad complained constantly about paying so much in taxes, but really did nothing about it. Was that life pushing him around? Rich Dad rocked slowly and silently in his chair. Just look at me. Ready to learn? He asked. I nodded my head slowly. As I said, there is a lot to learn. Learning how to have money work for you is a lifetime study. Most people go to college for 4 years and their education ends. I already know that my study of money will continue over my lifetime. Simply because the more I find out, the more I find out I need to know. Most people never study the subject. They go to work, get their paycheck, balance their checkbooks, and that's it. On the top of that, they wonder why they have money problems. Then they think that more money will solve the problem. If you realize that it's their lack of financial education that is the problem. So my dad has tax problem because he doesn't understand money? I asked confused. Look, said Rich Dad, taxes are just one small section on learning how to have money work for you. Today, I just learned to find out if you still have the passion to learn about money. Most people don't. They want to go to school, learn a profession, have fun at their work, and earn lots of money. One day they wake up with big money problem and then they can't stop working. That's the piece of only knowing how to work for money instead of studying how to have money work for you. So do you still have the passion to learn? Asked Rich Dad. I nodded my head. Good, said Rich Dad. Now get back to work. This time I will pay you nothing. What? I asked in amazement. You heard me, nothing. You will work the same 3 hours every Saturday, but this time you will not be paid 10 cents per hour. You said you wanted to learn to not work for money, so I am not going to pay you anything. I couldn't believe that what I was hearing. I have already had this conversation with Mike. He is already working, dusting, and stocking canned goods for free. You would better hurry and get back there. That's not fair, I shouted. You have got to pay something. You said you wanted to learn. If you don't learn this now, you will grow up to be like the two women and the older man sitting in my living room, working for money and hoping I don't fire them. Or like your dad, earning lots of money only to be in debt up to his eyeballs, hoping more money will solve the problem. If that's what you want, I will go back to our original deal of 10 cents an hour. Or you can do what most people grow up to do, complain that there is not enough pay, quit, and go looking for another job. But what do I do? I asked. Richard tapped me on the head. Use this, he said. If you use it well, You will soon thank me for giving you an opportunity and you will grow into a rich man. I stood there still not believing what a raw deal I had been handed. Here I came to ask for a raise and now I was being told to keep working for nothing. Rich Dad tapped me on the head again and said, "Use this. Now get out of here and get back to work." Lesson 1. The rich don't work for money. I didn't tell my poor dad I wasn't being paid. He would not have understood. And I did not want to try to explain something that I did not yet understand myself. For 3 more weeks, Mike and I worked for 3 hours every Saturday for nothing. The work didn't bother me, and the routine got easier. It was the missed baseball games and not being able to afford to buy a few comic books that got to me. Rich Dad stopped by at noon on the third week. We heard his truck pull up in the parking lot and sputter when the engine was turned off. He entered the store and greeted Mrs. Martin with a hug. After finding out how things were going in the store, he reached into the ice cream freezer, pulled out 2 bursts, paid for them, and signaled to Mike and me. "Let's go for a walk, boys." We crossed the street, dodging a few cars, and walked across a large grassy field where a few adults were playing softball. Sitting down at a remote picnic table, he handed Mike and me the ice cream bars. "How's it going, boys?" "Okay," Mike said. I nodded in agreement. "Learn anything yet?" Richard asked. Mike and I looked at each other, shrugged our shoulders, and shook our heads in unison. Avoiding one's life's biggest traps. "Well, you boys had better start thinking. You are started you are starting at one of life's biggest lessons. If you learn the lessons, you will enjoy a life of great freedom and security. If you don't learn the lesson, you will wind up like Mrs. Martin and most of the people playing softball in this park. They work very hard for little money, clinging to the illusion of job security, looking forward to a 3 week vacation each year and a skimpy pension after 45 years of work. If that excites you, I will give you a raise to 25 cents an hour. But these are good, hardworking people. Are you making fun of them?" I demanded. A smile came over Big Dad's face. "Mrs. Martin is like a mother to me. I would never be that cruel. I may sound cruel because I am doing my best to point something out to the two of you. I want to expand your point of view so you can see something most people never have the benefit of seeing because their vision is too narrow. Most people never see the trap they're in." Mike and I sit there, uncertain of his message. He sounded cruel, yet we could sense he has desperately wanting us to know something. With a smile, Rich Dad said, "Doesn't that 20 cents an hour sounds good? Doesn't it make your heart beat a little faster?" I shook my head. "No, but it really did. 25 cents an hour would be big bucks to me." "Okay, I will pay you $1 an hour," Rich Dad said, with a sly grin. Now my heart was beginning to race. My brain was screaming, "Take it, take it." I could not believe what I was hearing. Still, I said nothing. "Okay, $2 an hour." My little 9-year-old brain and heart nearly exploded. After all, it was 1956 and being paid $2 an hour would have made me the richest kid in the world. I couldn't imagine earning that kind of money. I wanted to say yes. I wanted the deal. I could see a new bicycle, new baseball gloves, and adoration of my friends when I flashed some cash. On top of that, Jimmy and his rich friend could never call me poor again. But somehow my mouth stayed silent. Maybe my brain had overheated and blown a fuse. But deep down, I badly wanted that $2 an hour. The ice cream had melted and was running down my hand. The ice cream stick was empty, and under it was a sticky mess of vanilla and chocolate that ants are enjoying. Rich Dad was looking at two boys staring back at him, eyes wide open and brains empty. He knew he was tasting us, and he knew there was a part of our emotion that wanted to take the deal. He knew that each human being has a weak and needy part of their soul that can be bought, and he knew that each human being also had a part of their soul that was strong and filled with a resolve that could never be bought. It was only a question of which one is stronger. He had tested thousands of souls in his life. He tested souls every time he interviewed someone for a job. "Okay, $5 an hour." Suddenly there was a silence from my inside. Something had changed. The offer was too big and had gotten ridiculous. Not too many grown-ups in 1956 made more than $5 an hour. The temptation disappeared and a calm set in. Slowly I turned to my left to look at Mike. He looked back at me. The part of my soul that was weak and needy was silent. The part of me that had no price took over. There was a calm and a certainty about money that entered my brain and soul. I knew Mike had gotten to that point also. "Good," Richard said softly. "Most people have a price, and they have a price because of human emotion named fear and greed. First, the fear of being without money motivates us to work hard, and then, once we get that paycheck, greed and desire starts us thinking about all the wonderful things money can buy. The pattern is then set." "What pattern?" I asked. "The pattern of get up, go to work, pay bills, get up, go to work, pay bills." Their lives are then run forever by two emotions, fear and greed. Offer them more money and they continue the cycle by also increasing their spending. This is what I called the rat race. "There is another way?" Mike asked. "Yes," said Rich Rat slowly, "but only a few people find it." "And what is that way?" Mike asked. "That's what I hope you boys will find out as you work and study with me. That is why I took away all forms of pay." "Any hint?" Mike asked. We are kind of tired of working hard, especially for nothing. Well, the first step is telling the truth, said Rich Dad. We haven't been lying, I said. I did not say you were lying. I said to tell the truth. Rich Dad came back. The truth about what? I asked. How you're feeling. Rich Dad said. You don't have to say it to anyone else, just yourself. You mean the people in the park, the people who work for you, Mrs. Martin, they don't do that? I asked. I doubt it, said Rich Dad. Instead, they feel fear of not having money. Instead of comforting the fear, they reach instead of think. They react instead of think. They react emotionally instead of using their head, Rich Dad said, tapping us on our heads. Then they get a few bucks in their hand, and again the emotion of joy and desire and greed take over, and again they react instead of think. So their emotions do their thinking, Mike said. That's correct, said Rich Dad. Instead of telling truth about how they feel, they react to their feelings. Fail to think. They feel the fear, they go to work, hoping that money will soothe the fear, and it doesn't. The old fear haunts them, and they go back to work, hoping again that money will calm their fears, and again it doesn't. Fear has them in this trap of working, earning money, hoping the fear will go away. But every day they get up and that old fear wakes up with them. For millions of people, that old fears keep them awake all night, causing a night of turmoil and worry. So they get up and go to work, hoping that a paycheck will kill that fear grounding at their soul. Money is running their lives, and they refuse to tell the truth about that. Money is in control of their emotions and hence their souls. Rich Dad said quietly, letting his words sink in. Mike and I heard what he said, but really did not understand fully what he was talking about. I just knew that I often wondered why grown ups hurried off to work. It did not seem like much fun, and they never looked at that happy, but something kept them hurrying off to work. Realizing we had absorbed as much as possible of what he was talking about, Rich Dad said, I want to I want you boys to avoid that trap. That is really what I want to teach you, not just to be rich, because being rich does not solve the problem. It doesn't? I asked, surprised. No, it doesn't. Let me finish the other emotion, which is desire. Some call it greed, but I prefer desire. It is perfectly normal to desire something better, prettier, more fun, or exciting. So people also work for money because of desire. They desire money for the joy. They desire money for the joy they think it can buy. But the joy that money brings is often short lived, and they soon need more money and more joy, more pleasure, more comfort, more security. So They keep working, thinking money will soothe their souls that are troubled by fear and desire. But money cannot do that. Even rich people? Mike asked. Rich people included, said Rich Dad. In fact, the reason many rich people are rich is not because of desire, but because of fear. They actually think that money can eliminate the fear of not having money, of being poor, so they amass ton of it only to find out the fear gets worse. They now fear losing it. I have friends who keep working even though they have planted, they have plenty. I know people who have millions who are more afraid now than when they were poor. They are terrified of losing all their money. The fear that drove them to get rich got worse. That weak and needy part of their soul is actually screaming louder. They don't want to lose the big houses, the cars, the high life that money has bought them. They worry about what their friends would say if they lost all their money. Many are emotionally desperate and neurotic, although they look rich and have more money. So, is a poor dad happier? I asked. No, I don't think so, replied Rich Dad. The avoidance of money is just as psychotic as being attached to money. As if on cue, the town derelict went past our table, stopping by the large rubbish can and rummaging around in it. The three of us watched him with great interest. When before we probably would have just ignored him. Rich Dad pulled $1 out of his wallet and gestured to the older man. Seeing the money, the derelict came over immediately, took the bill, thanked Rich Dad profusely, and hurried off, ecstatic with his good fortune. He is not much different from much of my employees, said Rich Dad. I have met so many people who say, "Oh, I'm not interested in money," yet they will work at a job for 8 hours a day. That's a denial of truth. If they weren't interested in money, then why are why are they working? That kind of thinking is probably more psychotic than a person who hoards money. As I sat there listening to uh, As I sat there listening to my rich dad, my mind was flashing back to the countless time my own dad said, "I'm not interested in money." He said those words often. He also covered himself by always saying, "I work because I love my job." So, what do we do? I asked. Not work for money until all trace of fear and greed are gone? No. That would be a waste of time, said Richman. Emotions are what makes us human, makes us real. The word emotions stand for energy in motion. Be truthful about your emotion and use your mind and emotions in your favor, not against yourself. Who? Said Mike. Don't worry about what I just said. It will make more sense in years to come. Just be an observer, not a reactor to your emotions. Most people do not know that it's their emotion that are doing the thinking. Your emotions are your emotions, but you have got to learn to do your own thinking. Can you give me an example? I asked. Sure, replied Rich Dad. When a person says, I need to find a job, it's most likely an emotion doing the thinking. Fear of not having money generates that thoughts. But people do need money if they have bills to pay, I said. Sure, they do, smiled Rich Dad. All I'm saying is that it's fear that is all too often doing the thinking. I don't understand, said Mike. For example, said Rich Dad, if the fear of not having enough money arises, instead of immediately running out to get a job so they can earn a few bucks to kill the fear, they instead m- might ask themselves this question: will a job be the best solution to this fear over the long run? In my opinion, the answer is no, especially when you look over a person's lifetime. A job is really a short term solution to a long term problem. But my dad is always saying, stay in school, get good grades so you can find a safe, secure job. I spoke out, somewhat confused. Yes, I understand. He says that, said Rich Dad, smiling. Most people recommend that, and it's a good idea for most people, but people make that recommendation primarily out of fear. Yes, said Rich. You you mean your dad says that you mean my dad says that because he's afraid? Yes, said Rich Dad. He's terrified that you won't be able to earn money and won't fit into society. Don't get me wrong. He loves you and wants the best for you. And I think his fear is justified. And education and a job are important, but it won't handle the fear. You see, that same fear that makes him get up in the morning to earn a few bucks is the fear that is causing him to be so fanatical about you going to school. So, what do you recommend? I asked. I want to teach you to master the power of money, not be afraid of it. And they don't teach that in school. If you don't learn it, you became a slave of money. It was finally making sense. He did want us to widen our views, to see what Mrs. Martin could not see, his employees could not see, or my dad for that matter. He used examples that sounded cruel at the time, but I have never forgotten them. My vision widened that day, and I could begin to see the trap that lay ahead for most people. You see, we are all employees ultimately. We just work at different levels, said Rich Dad. I just want you boys to have a chance to avoid the trap caused by those two emotions, fear and desire. Use them in your favor, not against you. That's what I want to teach you. I'm not interested in just teaching you to make a pile of money. That won't handle the fear or desire. If you don't first handle fear and desire and you get rich, you will only be a high paid slave. So, how do we avoid the trap? I asked. The main cause of poverty or financial struggle is fear and ignorance, not the economy or the government or the rich. It's self inflicted fear and ignorance that keeps people trapped. So, you boys go to school and get your college degrees. I'll teach you how to stay out of the trap. The pieces of the puzzle were appearing. My highly educated dad had a great education and a great career, but school never told him how to handle money or his fears. It became clear that I could learn different and important things from two fathers. So, you have been talking about the fear of not having money. How does the desire of money affects our thinking? Mike asked. How did you feel when I tempted you with a pay raise? Did you notice your desire rising? We nodded our heads. By not giving into your emotions, you were able to delay your reactions and think. That is most important. We will always have emotions of fear and greed. From here on in, it is most important for you to use those emotions to your advantage and for the long term, and not simply let your emotions run you by controlling your thinking. Most people use fear and greed against themselves. That's the start of ignorance. Most people live their lives chasing pay rises, and job security because of the emotions of desire and fear, not really questioning where those emotion driven thoughts are leading them. It is just like the picture of a donkey dragging a cart with its owner dangling a carrot just in front of the donkey's nose. The donkey's owner may be going where he wants to go, but donkey is chasing an illusion. Tomorrow there will only be another carrot for the donkey. You mean the moment I begin to picture a new baseball glove, candy and toys, that's like a carrot to a donkey? Mike asked. Yeah. And as you get older, your toys get more expensive. A new car, a boat, and a big house to impress your friends, said Rich Dad with a smile. Fear pushes you out the door, and desire calls you to in- enticing you toward the rocks. That's the trap. So, what's the answer? Mike said. Mike asked. What intensifies fear and desire is ignorance. That is why rich people with lot of money often have more fear the richer they get. Money is carrot the illusion. If the donkey could see the whole picture, it might rethink its choice to chase the carrot. Rich Dad went on to explain that a human's life is a struggle between ignorance and illusion. He explained that once a person stops searching for information and knowledge of one's self, ignorance sets in. That struggle is a moment to moment decision to learn to open or close one's mind. Look, school is very important. You got to school to learn a skill or profession so as to be a contributing member of society. Every culture needs teachers, doctors, mechanics, artists, cooks, business people, police officers, firefighters, soldiers. Schools train them so our culture can thrive and flourish, said Rich Dad. Unfortunately, for many people, school is the end, not the beginning. There was a long silence. Rich Dad was smiling. I did not comprehend everything he said that day, but as with most great teachers whose words contribute to teach for years, often long after they are gone, his words are still with me today. I have been a little cruel today, said Rich Dad. Cruel for a reason. I want you to always remember this talk. I want you to always think of Mrs. Martin. I want you always to think of the donkey. Never forget. Because too, your two emotions, fear and desire, can lead you into life's biggest trap if you are not aware of them controlling your thinking. To spend your life living in fear, never exploring your dreams is cruel. To work hard for money, thinking that money will buy you things that will make you happy, is also cruel. To wake up in the middle of the night terrified about paying bills is a horrible way to live. To live a life mm, dictated by the size of a paycheck is not really a life. Thinking that a job will make you feel secure is lying to yourself. That's cruel. And that's a trap I want you to avoid if possible. I have seen how money runs people's lives. Don't let that happen to you. Please don't let money run your life. A softball rolled under our table. Rich Dad picked it up and threw it back. So, what does ignorance have to do with greed and fear? I asked. Because it is ignorance about money that caused so much greed and so much fear, said Rich Dad. Let me give you some examples. A doctor wanting more money to better provide for his family raises his fees. By raising his fees, it makes health care more expensive for everyone. Now, it hurts the poor people the most. So, poor people have worse health than those with money. Because the doctors raise their rates, the attorney raise their rates. Because the attorney rates have gone up, school teachers want a raise, which raise our taxes and on and on. Soon there will be such a horrifying gap between the rich and the poor that chaos will break out and another great civilization will collapse. Great civilizations collapsed when the gap between the haves and have-nots was too great. America is on the same course. proving once again that history repeats itself because we do not learn from history. We only memorize historical dates names, not the lessons. Aren't prices supposed to go up? I asked. Not in an educated society with a well run government. Prices should actually come down. Of course, that is often only true in theory. Prices go up because of greed and fear caused by ignorance. If schools taught people about money, there would be more money and lower prices. But schools focuses only on teaching people to work for money, not how to harness money's power. But don't we have business schools? Mike asked. Aren't you encouraging me to go to business schools for my master's degree? Yes, said Rich Dad. But all too often, business schools train employees who are sophisticated bean counters. Heaven forbid a bean counter takes over a business. All they do is look at the numbers, fire people, and kill the business. I know because I fire bean counter. All they think about is cutting cost and raising prices, which cause more problems. Bean counting is important. I wish more people knew it, but it too is not the whole picture, added Rich Dad angrily. So, is there an answer? Asked Mike. Yes, said Rich Dad. Learn to use your emotions to think, not think with your emotions. When you was mastered your emotions first by agreeing to work for free, I knew there was hope. When you again re- resisted your emotions, when I tempted you with more money, you were again learning to think in spirit of being emotionally charged. That's the first step. Why is that step so important? I asked. Well, that's up to you to find out. If you want to learn, I will take you boys into the barrier pitch, that place where almost everyone else avoids. I will take you to that place where most people are afraid to go. If you go with me, you will let go of the idea of working for money and instead learning to have money work for you. And what will you get if we go with you? What if we agree to learn from you? What will we get? I asked. The same thing Barrier Rabbit got, said Rich Dad. Freedom from the tar baby. Is there a barrier pitch? I asked. Yes, said Rich Dad. The barrier pitch is our fear and our grit. Going into our fear and confronting our grit, our weakness, our neediness is the way out. The way out is, though, the mind by choosing our thoughts. Choosing our thoughts? Mike asked, puzzled. Yes, choosing what you think rather than reacting to our emotions. Instead of just getting up and going to work to solve your problems just because the fear of not having the money to pay your bills is scaring you. Thinking would be taking the time to ask yourself a question. A question like, is working harder at this the best solution to this problem. Most people are so terrified at not telling themselves the truth that fear is in control, that they cannot think and instead run out the door. Our baby is in control. That's what I mean by choosing your thoughts. And how do we do that? Mike asked. That's what I will be teaching you. I will be teaching you to have a choice of thoughts to consider rather than knee jerk reacting like glumping down your morning coffee and running out the door. Remember what I said before. A job is only a short term solution to a long term problem. Most people have only one problem in mind, and it's short term. It's the bill at the end of the month, the tour baby. Money now runs their lives. One should, or should I say, the fear and ignorance about money. So they do as their parents did, get up every day and go work for money, not having the time to say, is there another way? Their emotions now control their thinking, not their heads. Can you tell the difference between emotions thinking and head thinking? Mike asked. Oh, yes, I heard it all the time, said Rich Dad. I hear things like, well, everyone has to work, or the rich are crooks, or I will get another job. I deserve this raise. You cannot push me around, or I like this job because it's secure. Instead of, is there something I'm missing here? Which breaks the emotional thought and gives you time to think clearly. I must admit, it was a great listen to be getting. To know when someone was speaking out of emotion or out of clear thought. It was a lesson that served me well for life, especially when I was the one of speaking out of reaction and not from clear thought. As we headed back to the store, Rich Dad explained that the rich really did make money. They did not work for it. He went on to explain that when Mike and I were casting 5-cent pieces out of lead, thinking we were making money, we were very close to thinking the way the rich think. The problem was that it was illegal for us to do. It was legal for the government and bank to do, but not us. He explained that there are legal ways to make money and illegal ways. Rich Dad went on to explain that Rich knows that money is an illusion, truly like the carrot for the monkey. It's only out of fear and greed that the illusion of money is held together by billions of people thinking that money is real. Money is really made up. It was only because of the illusion of confidence and the ignorance of the masses that the house of cards stood standing. In fact, he said, in many ways, the donkey's carrot was more valuable than money. He talked about the gold standard that America was on each and that each dollar bills was actually a silver certificate. What concerned him was the rumor that we would someday go off the gold standard and our dollars would no longer be silver certificates. When that happens, boys, all hell is going to break loose. The poor, the middle class, and the ignorant have will have their lives ruined simply because they will continue to believe that money is real and that the company they work for or the government will look after them. They really did not understand what he was saying that day, but over the years it made more and more sense. Seeing what others miss. As he climbed into his pickup truck outside of his little convenience store, he said, "Keep working, boys, but the sooner you forget about needing a paycheck, the easier your adult life will be. Keep using your brain, work for free, and soon your mind will show you ways of making money far beyond what I could ever pay for. You will see things that other people never see, opportunities right in front of their noses. Most people never see these opportunities because they're looking for money and security. So that's all they got. The moment you see one opportunity, you will see them for the rest of your life. The moment you do that, I will teach you something else. Learn this and you will avoid one's life's biggest trap. You will never ever touch the tar baby. Mike and I picked up other things from the store and waved goodbye to Mrs. Martin. We went back to the park to the same picnic bench and spent several more hours thinking and talking. We spent the next week at school thinking and talking. For 2 more weeks, we kept thinking, talking, and working for free. At the end of the second Saturday, I was again saying goodbye to Martin and looking at the comic book stand with a longing gaze. The hard thing about not even getting 30 cents every Saturday was that I didn't have any money to buy comic books. Suddenly, as Mrs. Martin was saying goodbye to Mike and me, I saw something he was doing that I had never seen her do before. I mean, I had seen her do it, but I never took notice of it. Mrs. Martin was cutting the front page of the comic book in half. He was keeping the top half of the comic book cover and throwing the rest of the comic book into a large brown cardboard box. When I asked her what she did with the comic books, she said, "I throw them away. I give the top half of the cover back to the comic book distributor for credit when he brings in the new comics. He's coming in an hour." Mike and I waited for an hour. Soon the distributor arrived and I asked him if I could have the comic books. To which he replied, "You can have them if you work for this store and do not resell them." Our partnership was revived. Mike's mom had a spare room in the basement that no one used. We cleaned it out and began piling hundreds of comics in that room. Soon out of comic book library was open to the public. We hired Mike's younger sister, who loved to study, to be head librarian. He charged each child 10-cent admission to the library, which was opened from 2:30 to 4:30 p.m. every day after school. The customers, the children of the neighborhood, could read as many comics as they could in 2 hours. It was a bargain for them since a comic cost 10 cents each and they could read 5 or 6 in 2 hours. Mike's sister would check the kids as they left to make sure they weren't borrowing any comic books. He also kept the books lodging in how many kids show up each day, who they were, and any comments they might have. Mike and I averaged 9.50 per dollar per week over a 3 month period. We paid his sister $1 a week and allowed her to read the comics for free, which she rarely did since he was always studying. Mike and I kept our agreement by working in the store every Saturday and collecting all the comic books from the different stores. We kept our agreement to the distributor by not selling any comic books. We burned them once they got too tattered. We tried opening a branch office, but we could never quite find someone as dedicated as Mike's sister we could trust. At an early age, we found out how hard it was to find good stuff. 3 months after the library first opened, a fight broke out in the room. Some bullies from another neighborhood pushed their way in and started it. Mike's dad suggested we shut down the business, so our comic book business shut down and we stopped working on Saturdays at the convenience store. Anyway, Rich Dad was excited because he had new things he wanted to teach us. He was happy because we had learned our first lesson so well. We had learned to have money work for us. By not getting paid for our work at the store, we were forced to use our imagination to identify an opportunity to make money. By starting our own business, the comic book library, we were in control of our own finance, not depending on an employer. The best part was that our business generates money for us even when we are not physically there. Our money worked for us. Instead of paying us money, Rich Dad had given us so much more.